All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap this week's Mets versus Blue Jays series, as well as all of the other news and rumors going on in Mets land. But of course, before we do that, I got to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel like we do every single time for this very podcast, which is now recorded live on Sundays and Thursdays regularly when they line up with these regular season series. For those of you watching on playback in the future, you want to join the conversation, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you who are in the live chat right now, I want to let you know we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, your instant thoughts regarding this team. You feel like you're being ignored? You're not being ignored. They're just being starred throughout the entire show. And we'll be sure to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, remember to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok, which mainly features Frank's instant reactions after every single Mets game, titled The Mets Frankly Postgame. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version that drops at 9 a.m. the following day that these are recorded. Let's get into episode number 82. And we could have a fourth panelist joining us. I'm sure you guys know who that is later on in this stream. But as for the meantime, I am joined by my two partners in crime, the usuals, Frank, Andrew.
Boricuas.
Sure. Andrew, how have you been? You weren't here last time. And the Mets are coming off of a series victory, still playing great baseball.
Yeah, going up to that, third world country that is Canada and whooping some ass. Take 2 out
Great.
of 3.
Thank you for burning out our entire Canadian demographic.
There you go.
Thanks for that.
All you Canadians, bye. But yeah, another series ending in a playoff spot, and this time no longer tied back to that one game separating. It seems like it will be like this for the rest of the year until obviously that last series in Atlanta. But again, with San Diego and Arizona, it's back down to a game and 2. So again, we keep saying that that's going to be the stretch. That's the series. Let's say San Diego, Arizona lose 2 or 3 games. We win 2 or 3 games. We're having a completely different conversation, but also the hell stretch has started. I know we do have that one series on the last homestand against the Nationals, but we all know that's a hell game too because we can't just beat bad teams. But overall, you saw some more inconsistencies from the offense, but overall the bullpen for the most part was good. Again, it obviously had its blow up in game 2, but for all stretches of the whole team, they're playing competitive baseball and good baseball. And we need to be more positive because you know what? We're almost 30 games over 500. I'm not even doing the math right, but hell, we're winning a lot of games. It's September. We're going to the Super Bowl. Let's just all be happy, positive, and Tylor Megill pitched well. See, that's always a good thing.
Overdoing it every single time, just overdoing it. Frank, let's just say a back and forth series, lots of emotion. Once again, day in and day out. Continuing to get closer and closer towards the end of the season. 16 games left. What do you think right now? How are you feeling?
You're right. It is lots of emotion. And you know what? It comes down to the wire. And you have days like today where you're a game up. You have days where you're tied. You have days where you're behind. So it's just a matter of where you're going to be when it's all said and done. I mean, that's really what it's going to come down to. And you know what? As we know, like Andrew was saying, these next stretch of games, the Phillies series, and then obviously that Braves series, it's really going to be the make or break. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's a matter of just trying to stay afloat around here as you're going up against Philadelphia because they are a really good team. They are first in the division. Even though they haven't played as well in the second half as they did in the first half, it's going to be tough, but I feel like with how they played against Arizona, how they played against San Diego, they could still do it. You know, I still feel like they have a chance of playing good baseball. We've seen plenty of stretches where they have played well. I mean, that's how they got to the spot they're in right now. They have a playoff spot as we speak. So they just have to kind of continue that. And you just hope that, like, they don't, as we're going to get to, like, slumps and things like that, just that everyone's clicking at the right time because, as we know, that's really what it's all about. It's all about timing. It's all about who's hot. The team that gets hot is the team that goes far. So you just hope that like these guys just kind of catch a nice little streak and they'll be good to go.
And listen, I think once we get down to the final stretch, which pretty much we are at right now. Again, like I said, 16 games. You are going to start picking and dissecting things apart from what's going on in this team of how this can translate to the playoffs. There are some pieces that we expect to be better contributors than they've been in the regular season, and we will get to that of some of the pieces that have not done well. But we also have seen them play not even if I was going full on specific saying that they have just been playing absolute perfect baseball, but they have been playing great baseball, good enough to be in the win column a lot more than the loss column. Now, yesterday, of course, we know was quite a roller coaster. Let's just say that, and we will get into it. But I think that the full on conclusion that I have from this, and I don't know if this is really a low hanging fruit at this point, but it pretty much just proves my point that this team has two different levels, and that is either 0 or 100, especially on the offensive side. And I'm not, again, and then listen, I know that there have been people who have watched our show and they've been a little critical with how kind of we've dissected some of this stuff with how well they have been playing baseball. But there are some little things and underlying things that I would say do come as a concern. I'm not saying that there is much of it as of right now because they've put themselves in such a great position to make a move to the playoffs. And I think that if they keep playing at this pace, they don't even need to play perfect baseball to get into the playoffs at this current moment. You could probably see like 10-6, maybe even 9-7, maybe. We're talking about like the old-fashioned NFL seasons of what gets you in, right? 9 wins, 10 wins, something like that. But all of it has to come timely. And when we talk about timely, also comes with the timely hitting. And they have had the timely hitting, the timely offense in this series. Scraping from the bare minimum, yes. But again, like I said, with this 0 to 100 type of volume, I don't know how that is going to translate to the postseason. And I hope that they get a little bit more of a grasp on that because, yes, this game is more fueled by the long ball. It's more fueled by extra base hits and stuff like that. Athleticism as well, full-on tools, winning in those margins now with the new stolen base rules. But when I say that, the fact that we have seen them through a majority of games be asleep, and then towards the end they wake up, they score in bunches. I'm not saying it's a non-recipe for success because it has been working and they've prevailed the way that good teams do. But I'm just saying that when it's all said and done, you're going to need the timely hitting. You're going to need that timely play in the postseason. There is no doubt in your mind that you have to hit in the postseason. You have to pitch well in the postseason to win in the postseason. And I think that, yes, we're seeing those pieces come together, but there are still rather some parts of concern, not mainly just the play on the field, but there's also some guys on this roster who I feel like at this point, I don't even know why they're even like here at this current moment. Like we have talked about, tons of people talking about DJ Stewart. We'll talk about him as well later on when we get into the outfield and all stuff like that. But I am just being the cautiously optimistic person. I know that they're capable of winning. I know that I've seen them beat these types of teams before in crunch time, but I also know that there are signs of this going south. I'm not trying to sound negative. I'm not trying to sound like I am, the big demon that I supposedly am, that sometimes I play, that sometimes I troll. What I'm saying is that right now, there's not really many rooms for mistakes. Let's just say that, especially when you have a wild card race that is so tight with just one other team. I mean, it's going to come down to these 4 other teams. We know this: the Padres, the Diamondbacks, the Mets, and the Braves. But with the Braves, that they have had a tendency to best us when it matters, there still is a thought in the back of my mind that it could go south. I'm not saying that it's going to, but they just got to keep it up. And you can take that as any way that you want to. But speaking of taking it any way that you want to, of different directions that this has gone in. Quite a roller coaster series in Toronto, let's just say that. And let's get into that and run this one down of everything that happened, the events, the recaps of everything. Of course, the Mets started this one off with Tylor Megill on the mound. Made a spot start for Paul Blackburn. We'll get into it more later. 6 scoreless after a rough first inning where he threw 30 pitches. JD Martinez would start off the scoring with an RBI single in the 4th. Danny Young would struggle in relief and give the lead away in the 7th, but the Blue Jays would give runs back on 2 wild pitches by Tommy Nance, one of their relievers, to give the Mets the lead right back, and they would keep it from there. Good with a good outing from Ryan Stanek, striking out the side in the 8th, and Edwin Diaz finishing it off with a scoreless inning to take the opener 3-2. Game 2, David Peterson struggled to get out of the 5th inning, as it's been something that has not happened recently, as he's been red hot, allowing 5 runs on 8 hits, just 2 strikeouts, and multiple defensive miscues behind him. Truly a night to forget, but Brandon Nimmo would end up driving in a run. Lindor, Winker, and Stewart would all collect hits. Iglesias would manufacture a run. Iglesias would manufacture the second run all by himself with a double and 2 wild pitches, scoring around, but the Mets had plenty of opportunities throughout this game, and they couldn't cash in, going 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position. Huascar Brazaban would also allow another run later on, pretty much burying the Mets to a 6-2 loss in Game 2. Game 3, Sean Manaea continued his great 2024 campaign, with 6 2/3 of 1-run ball, walking 4, but he did strike out 8 on 109 pitches. The Mets offense was absolutely non-existent for 8 innings, as right-handed pitcher Bowden Francis took a no-hitter into the 9th, but Francisco Lindor, the MVP candidate, finally broke it up for the Mets with a massive solo home run to tie the game, and the floodgates would open from there. As we said, the Mets scoring in bunches. They would load the bases before Alonso would give the Mets the lead on a sac fly to make it 2-1. Starling Marte would add on to it with another sac fly, making it 3-1. And Francisco Alvarez would break the game open on a 3-run homer to dead center to make it 6-1. Ryan Stanek would come in for the 9th. He would struggle a bit, allowing 2 hits and also a run. Edwin Diaz would come in with the off day today for the final out on just 1 pitch to secure the series victory and a gut punch style comeback win. The Mets are now 80-66, sitting alone in the final wild card spot with a 1-game lead on the Braves, and just like we said, 16 games left in the regular season. Also, just a game and a half behind San Diego and 2 games behind Arizona. It is a tight race right now. Those 4 teams separated by about 4.5 games right now, 3.5. It's getting close. There's a little bit of a gap between the Cubs there, of course, but they're kind of still in it, still knocking on the door in these final few weeks. But the main takeaways from this series, there was some good, there was some bad. There was definitely a huge mood changer that was led by the captain that is yet to be named the captain. Frank, what did you see from this series? Just a absolute roller coaster. I think that's the best way to see it, because it started off okay with them not performing the best offensively. A clunker in the second game, not looking great throughout 8 innings, and then all of a sudden an explosion. Just crazy. Let's just say that in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when you're looking at that last game, like you said, just being no hit through 8 innings, you definitely have concerns by the time you're in the 9th inning. You're like, oh, is this really going to happen right now? Like, no one's going to get a hit here. And it was frustrating when there was like the amount of walks that you saw and hit by pitches, and even like the hard outs, the long outs, like the one that Bader hit that went to the wall. Like, you felt like they had a chance at some hits, but they didn't quite do it. And then, of course, it has to be Lindor as the guy that comes through, and then all of a sudden, everything just follows. And I feel like you saw a lot of bad Toronto, particularly in the bullpen. The wild pitches, the passed balls, the walks in that ninth inning after Lindor hit the home run, and you're seeing the bases get loaded. I was glad to see the Mets get sack flies. I mean, that was good, but I mean, just overall, it's like even though they scored runs, you technically didn't really see much hitting with runners in scoring position. They were scoring due to wild pitches, pass balls, sack flies. I loved Alvarez's home run. I hope that he builds on that. And Mark Vientos taking the 0-4, that was like concerning because of just like we've talked about so many other guys struggling. Like it really comes down to Lindor and Vientos doing a really good job, because if they don't, it's hard to rely on other guys to step up. So I feel like that's kind of tough expectations for those two players, to be like, you guys have to be perfect, because if you're not, we're in trouble. That definitely is a pretty alarming. And then to go along with that, the way the offense looked at the end of the Cincinnati series and then like carrying over into the Toronto series. So all of a sudden you're starting to see like a few days in a row of the offense not looking great. Again, the results were they're able to win the games, which at this point in the season, that's the thing that matters the most, obviously. But I feel like, as we're the thing about like the negativity, we're trying to project and say, okay, well, where does this end up? And you know what? When you're facing the really good Philadelphia pitching or the really good Atlanta pitching, if you have a struggling offense, that isn't very good for those matchups. Like that just makes things even harder when you're already facing good pitching. If you have a struggling offense, that doesn't project well as far as winning. So that's kind of where our concerns come from. It's not that we hate the Mets, it's because we want the Mets to do well. We want to see the team actually win something. And we're just trying to point out some things that concern us going forward, because there have been times when things look great and it crashes and burns. So we're just trying to point out, like, these are the things that we see. What happens, because with the Mets, anything could happen. Things could go really good or it could go poorly. But it's just that, like, there are some things that, even though, like, again, they won the series, they very easily could have lost the series. I mean, taking the no-hitter into the ninth, things definitely got pretty dicey there at the end.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that it all can come from overreaction. It all can come from, just doubting from history or things like that. But the one thing that I really like to emphasize here is that there are pieces that have been shown by the Mets throughout this entire year that they can be a functional team and win as a team. I feel like as of recent, most of the offense, it seems like it's just been the Mets rotation plus Lindor and Vientos. That's kind of how I have felt it. And even though they are red hot, and the long balls, the extra base hits that these two have been able to give us on a consistent basis have been an impact, we've talked about the Mets having a deep enough lineup as to where they can have this in a team win, and Pete Alonso doesn't have to carry such a massive load. JDM does not have to carry that much. And that's kind of how they've put themselves in that position as to where, they have a deep enough lineup to do that. And we will get into the pieces that make it a deep enough lineup that have not been contributing in this second half, that have kind of left a little bit of a hole when Lindor doesn't do anything or when Vientos doesn't do anything. But overall, again, they got the series win. They did what they needed to do. It would have been great to have a sweep there, but things just happen. Andrew, what did you like? What did you dislike? Because I want to get into some specifics afterwards, but Toronto, we were in Canada, not in this country. I know how you feel about Canada, as you just expressed. What did you see that you liked? What did you see that you disliked?
Yeah, I mean, overall, again, you saw another good start from Sean Manaea. It gets kind of overshadowed because, again, you were getting no hit by the other side and the offense not showing up. But, Manaea had another quality start. Couldn't get through 7, but 6 2/3. You take that from him. Again, Megill gives you a quality start at, back-to-back consecutive quality starts. But again, it's the offense that is continuing to be the big talking point of, yes, you can take advantage against teams who have these wild bullpens and aren't good defensively. You're not gonna. Can you get hot against? You're going up against that gauntlet, and this isn't the same old Phillies where like, okay, if you can battle Nola through 6, 7, you can get to that bullpen. Now Carlos Estevez and Matt Strom, like now that bullpen is now lethal. So it's not even. And the Mets have done a good job against bullpens overall wise. But again, why do we have to wait to the 7th inning to wake the hell up? Why can't you get to it? It's not like the Mets haven't had guys on base, obviously excluding the no-hitter game, like throughout this series and other series. It's not like we're getting mowed every inning, and once the 7th inning hits, they're like, all right, time to go to work. Like, they're getting guys on base. You've seen the inconsistencies with runners in scoring position when Jose Iglesias, a guy who was not on the 40-man roster, is your most consistent and best hitter running the scoring position. It's been a blessing that he's been able to provide that, especially now with him playing every day now. But again, Pete Alonso, it was nice to see him actually be a productive AB in a high leverage spot. We know we've made that, complaint about him striking out and just not being a guy in a big moment. Of course you'd love, a base hit or obviously a grand slam, just to at least get a productive AB and getting that run in, where most of the year he hasn't been able to get that, at least get a run in. He's used to striking out. Again, and you're not going to always have that ability when a reliever comes in and Chad Green can't find the strike zone and 2 wild pitches in an inning. Like, that doesn't happen, especially in the next 2. It's not going to happen. So you thank you, because again, you do need a little bit of luck. You need to be good, and you also need a smidge of luck. Can this, because luck is not going to be here every single series. It worked against bad teams. Now you hope, like we said, the lineup should be better. And we'll talk about why it hasn't been, where you've seen some guys just completely fall off the face of the earth. You have Lindor continuing to show he should be the MVP of the National League. Screw Ohtani. He does this every year, and he's going to pitch next year. He's going to win the next 7 MVPs. Why not just give it to the guy the 1 year he's not pitching? It's not like the dude's not going to win the next 6, because we've got this bias. Oh, he does pitching and hitting, and give him the MVP. Have him win the Hank Aaron Award. MVP is for the most valuable player, not the best statistics. But in this league, it's just going to go to the guy with the best statistics, and Francisco Lindor is going to get robbed of the MVP because, would have Ohtani done the same thing? Possible. But again, how this game was going, just like that, with one swing, he changes the game. And then obviously the floodgates open up after the fact. But again, it was nice to see Stanek in the first game was pitching well, obviously, and in game 3, he has the kind of clunker of an inning, which was pitching better. It sucks to see that. Obviously, Diaz in game 1, we all kind of knew that when that ball was hit, we thought for a split second that ball was out of here. We know how, especially some parts in the season. But again, it dies the track.
I didn't think that was leaving.
You suck him off.
No,
I
didn't think that was leaving. I thought Marte was going to drop it.
Drop it. That's also another thing. But again, normally we think that ball's going over the fence. If that was, maybe a couple months later, he has looked amazing since. And his consecutive zeros continue to go up. Like the last, 9 appearances, he's throwing up zeros? It was 7 going into this series. I think it's 9. So 9 consecutive outings. He threw 1 pitch in Sunday. Doesn't really count. But hey, he got the save. It's all that matters, and you get the win. So you take it, and you wish it was a sweep against a second division team. Now again, you get the day off, which is nice. You get in the Philly. Don't eat anything. They're going to poison you. But get in the Philly and focus on and getting this hell stretch going. And you got to go up against Nola, who, a guy that we've had some success, but also you've seen absolutely dominate. And again, you hope the offense can wake up, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I do want to talk about a point of emphasis that Darren Rivera actually put here in the chat, saying, talking about them taking too many fastballs and hitters counts. We've talked about this before. We never see them swing 3-0, and we never see them swing 2-0. We never see them swing 1-0. A very conservative way of how they look at it, because again, like we've talked about, swinging at strikes, don't swing at balls. Obviously, more easier said than done. But when you look at, how the approach kind of leveled out throughout this series, I think it was very amplified. They were eventually able to get going, and they were eventually able to pull it out. Some with the help of the bullpen, some with the help of the plate discipline from some of the guys on this team. And then there was the long ball as well, which I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure when Lindor hit that home run, that was our first extra base hit of the series. Was that true? Is that true?
I think somebody had a double, like maybe Iglesias had a double.
Was
Or
it
something like that
Iglesias who
earlier in
did
the
it?
series.
Yeah, Iglesias. Second,
Yeah,
first
second extra base
home
hit.
run of the series.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
First home run of the series, second extra base hit of the series. So that pretty much just opened up the floodgates, like we said in the ninth inning. And it was really impressive to see just Lindor come through like we've seen him come through in these situations.
While he was in a slump.
Yeah.
Is he technically in a slump, or is it a rough stretch? I guess I don't know.
I mean, he was in an 0-4. He was in the 0-4
Oh,
a
for
little bit. I mean,
12 or something. It was something like
he
that,
was
right?
A little bit of a struggle past few
yeah.
days, like.
Yeah, and again, there are some things that I feel like the Mets do leave on the table a lot. Not mainly thinking a lot of middle pitches, fouling them off, chasing a lot of secondary pitches that some are in the other batter's box. We see them taking in hitters' counts, not taking advantage of that. And I feel like they just need to be a little bit more aggressive when they get these pitches in the zone, because I know that there's better pitch recognition on this team as compared to what we have been seeing recently. And that is the one reason as to why they've been struggling with runners in scoring position, because there hasn't been a hitter's count they have taken advantage of. There hasn't been pitches they've been taking advantage of. There's been a lot of just no movement with runners in scoring position. It's not just these little stupid pop-ups or ground outs like we've talked about, them grounding into a lot of double plays. We've seen them strike out a lot with runners in scoring position. That's been one of the main culprits. And in those situations, it's been a little bit tough. Now, I do want to talk about one thing that I didn't like, and this is probably going to redirect the conversation completely. Not really much that we know already, and I know that a lot of people don't like it when we go after this certain person, but I'm going to put it all out here right now. David Peterson definitely struggled in the second game. I'm going to put everything about David Peterson aside here. I'm not going after him. I've said my piece with him. I'm not going to do it. He struggled mightily, not just with his command. His control was all over the place. He couldn't find the strike zone. His velocity was down as well. He just was not sharp whatsoever. Lots of defensive miscues, a lot of hard contact, a lot of things that can rattle any pitcher, no matter how experienced they are. It took, let's say, 5 runs to come across, 4 runs to come across, multiple hit by pitches, a bunch of defensive miscues, and then Jeremy Hefner goes out to the mound. That's what really got me so pissed off, in the fact of that, again, there still continues to be this continuation with Jeremy Hefner, that he just has such a lack of feel for the mental game of these guys on the mound. And it really frustrates me, especially with a team that has struggled with walks and struggled with control all year. We still have these problems over and over and over again. Again, like I said, I'm not going to excuse David Peterson for the performance that he had. He was not good. But when you have coaching that probably should visit the mound after back-to-back walks, back-to-back base hits, where he's just not finding the strike zone, I feel like that does say a lot of wonders when you talk about him just like exiling himself from those situations. I know that mound visits are kept track of now, but when it's needed, it's needed. And that's what really frustrated me about this, because we've seen David Peterson, whether you're high on him or not, like I am, when I'm not high, where I'm not high on him, and I don't think that he's performing as well as he actually is. We've seen him get out of these situations before with ground balls, with double plays, but for some reason they did not want to give him a breather whatsoever, and it kind of just spiraled completely in that inning. We already saw these leadoff walks, hit by pitches. He was just losing the strike zone, and it was really concerning to see your pitching coach just sit in the dugout and watch the turmoil just like rise, continue. And And I know that we've talked about this many, many times before, but again, I know that David Peterson has pitched very well this year, but like there's no initiative that's taken, and it gets very frustrating. And I think that I'm not saying that that cost them the game because the hitting was not great, but in that moment, in that situation, he needs to go out to the mound and settle things in, and he didn't. And that I feel like was a massive coaching mistake in that game. And I feel like you probably could have gotten a better start if Jeremy Hefner got a little bit better of a grasp on that start.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to Hefner, I've had my complaints about him, and we're wrong because so many guys are having career years and things like that. When it comes to the mound visit stuff, I've definitely agreed. I feel like there's a lot of times where it's like the bases are loaded and still no Hefner comes out, and I'm like, oh, I feel like now's a pretty good time to come out there. But I'll kind of go a different direction of that particular situation. What kind of concerns me or bothers me is still not having a traditional long man, because all in all, like Pearson, it was a bad outing, but it wasn't like a 7-run, 10-run outing.
No.
But I feel like if that did happen and it was the third inning or whatever, the Mets don't really have someone they turn to. I mean, like, you go to Braziban and you piece together the rest, but you tire out your whole bullpen. And it comes to the point where, to me, it's like two wrongs don't make a right in that sense, where it's like, okay, my starter got bombed, I'm going to lose the game. But now I'm going to use my entire bullpen, and now that might cost me another game down the road. Whereas if I just had a long man, even though I'm down by a bunch, I could just get through the game and have my relievers for other games. And that's where my criticism of somebody like an Adam Ottavino comes into play, because even though Ottavino's been better lately, don't get me wrong, he's been better than what he was. But I still feel like just that particular position, it'd be a better option. But in fairness, I'm looking at the Syracuse Mets roster, and it's like that guy that I'm talking about, he doesn't really exist right now in-house. I mean, when you look at it, a lot of these guys are traditional relievers, 1 inning, 2 inning guys. I mean, you want to call up Joey Lucchese to be a long man? You could, but it's only because you have extra roster space. Like, he'd just be there for blowouts. But other than that, there's not really a guy that would be a traditional long man, unless you called up one of the young guys. Like, if you wanted to put Blade into that kind of scenario, or once Sprout's ready to go, put him in that kind of scenario, you technically could, but you maybe necessarily shouldn't. And does Christian Scott maybe go into that role if he becomes healthy? Maybe. If Blackburn is healthy, could Megill go into that role? Maybe, or it could be Blackburn himself. I don't think that's the worst idea either, because Megill, we're going to talk in a little bit, he actually pitched pretty good. So I feel like that's something that I would like to see be addressed, just in case it does happen, just in case you do have a blow up. I just don't want to see that cost them other games down the road. So that's where I'd be more worried. I feel like, Pearson had been so great lately, especially against really good competition. You're going to have a bad start. I mean, keep in mind, this is not one of those players that we talked about, like, not in the opening day rotation, like, not in your top 5. And he was on the injured list, but still, he didn't really have that high of expectations. So, honestly, all things considered, he's overachieved and kind of exceeded expectations this season with the results. Even though it hasn't been the prettiest and doesn't look great on the computer, he still has done a lot of productive things for this team against good competition. And to go against a really bad offense like Toronto, to be that his bad game, was very just not expected. So I thought that definitely was pretty weird. But overall, I've said my piece on Hefner. I'm not going to really do this again. I do think the timing is not great. I feel like, the times when the shortstop initiates the mound visit instead of the pitching coach, or when there are times where the shortstop is doing more of the talking than the pitching coach, or the second to third year catcher is doing more talking than the pitching coach, that isn't the greatest look, in my opinion, but that's just how it's been all season.
Yeah, this is kind of how I focus on this discussion, because again, you already know that even if David Peterson had like that, you'd expect me to, make my victory lap, troll everyone, piss everyone off. But I mean, I really wasn't paying attention to that, because I think that in the moment of the moment before it all unravels, at one point they needed to just make some kind of initiative or some kind of game plan or some kind of sequencing. Because with me, I've always been someone who's in favor of the mound visit when it's either less than 2 outs, multiple runners on. Let's say if he starts off the inning walking back-to-back hitters, the first 2 guys get on, mound visit. Because not to mention the vulnerability of the pitcher, like we've said before, with the walks coming back to bite you, you also have this other component of second base where they can clue off the signs as well. I don't think we talk about that enough, as well as the vulnerability aspect of pitching from the stretch. Runners on second have that sort of advantage. Now, again, you still have the pitch comm now that makes it a little bit better, but there are some tips that you still can take off from the pitcher. That's the type of sign stealing that is allowed in this game. But when it comes to the point of the vulnerability aspect and the mental game, I just don't see it happening with Jeremy Hefner, especially when you have a team that walks so many batters as they do. It is kind of concerning, and I'm not saying that Peterson shouldn't be held accountable for how he pitched, because he just did not pitch well, and he had quite a clunker. He did not pitch well. He did not go deep into the game. He just was not sharp. But I feel like preventing some of these things from happening, these types of blow-ups, and even though the starting pitching has been so good recently, we still have seen a lot of instances where you feel like there should have been just a little bit more done in that sort of thing. And I'm not, and again, like I've said, I'm not excusing Peterson for the start he had, but I feel like it probably would have helped in that moment to go out to the mound, settle things down, and not just tell him, okay, go, continue, and just get completely shelled. I feel like there's, an equation that goes on with that as to where, looking into this series where, you still need wins to keep pace, you'd like to see, even if David Peterson doesn't pitch the best, to keep you in the game. And it just completely got out of hand before he can come out to the mound, which I think it was 5-1 by the time that he came out to the mound. Just way too late. The timing just was not great, and I feel like that it resulted in a lot of damage. I'm not saying that coaching's the one to blame on this. I'm saying that Jeremy Hefner needs to come up with some kind of initiative before the tower, before everything explodes, you know what I mean? Like before there's a complete blow up. If you're seeing something, say something, like we say on the subway, right? Like if you see something, say something. And I feel like that's the main reason as to why that entire game, collapsed. Again, it's one game. They put it behind them and they won the series. Again, it took a village. Like we said, we can go back into that comeback that they did have of, their entire offense just going complete dead for 8 innings. Francisco Lindor completely jolts this entire team into a 6-run inning and basically sends them to Philadelphia on an exclamation point, where we expected this could have been one of the ugliest losses of the season if that happened. It went from potentially one of the ugliest losses to one of the most ugliest performances to, an incredible just burst of energy that again, we've seen this team score in bunches, like I've said, but once Lindor hit that home run, it was off to the races. Everybody on Toronto's side was completely rattled. Chad Green couldn't throw a strike when he came in here, and the Mets took advantage of it. And they had the table set for them right after that game was tied, and they ran away with it. It was very impressive. Andrew, I'll go to you. Anything else you'd like to add for this series? What do you think else you'd like to dissect?
I guess we'll just
any
get
main
the Hefner
points.
Thing. Really, we'll go back to the Hefner discussion. Have the Mets, and this is just like I'm being serious, and we made fun of MLB tracking mound visits. Have the Mets even come close to losing half their mound visits this year? Like it's not like you get 7 or whatever.
I
the
can't remember it
number
getting
is.
to
What's
like
the penalty?
1 or something like that. Like it's
Exactly. What
never
even
like
is the
in
penalty?
danger.
Yeah.
Is
Like,
it? Do
we
you, do
don't
you
even
lose like 5 games in the standings? Is
I
that the
don't know.
penalty?
But like again,
I don't know.
and it's like
Someone
I
look
laugh,
that up
I can,
for us.
Yeah, somebody chat if you want to try that. And it's like I laugh. We talk about this with Hefner, but yet then I'll watch Seattle, and yes, Seattle's pitching is good. Obviously, that's not the problem with that team. And their pitching coach comes out, if like Kirby or Wu or anybody, as soon as they're like a slight little traffic, he's out, and they're burning like 5 to 6 mound visits a game. But yet Hefner, who's supposedly this generational Andrew Bailey type, just revolutionary pitching coach, you maybe see him twice a game, if that. If we're lucky. Like, I get it, and it's like we said, we still don't know what the penalty. I think Frank is trying to figure it out, like what the hell he's looking at. But again, the point of is there is no harsh penalty to going out and checking on your pitcher, and it's not like the Mets have a young pitching staff, where it's like most of them are veterans, but even still, Peterson, McGill,
Just give him a breather.
Exactly,
Just give him a breather. Like I
was gonna say something I didn't, but like again, give the
You're a
especially
child. That's why.
yes. But even still, let's see, a 12-pitch AB.
Oh,
Go out there.
I think I got it. I think
What
I
you
got
got?
it. Apparently it's saying that there's no real penalty, and it says if a team is out of mound and a coach attempts to go on the mound, they'll probably simply stop them and not allow them to do so.
So even kills time for rest.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like timeouts in a way where it's like you're just afraid that you don't have one left in case. It's like challenges. Like you're afraid that you don't have one when you feel like you really need it. It's very dumb, but it's like that different rule where it's like you can't have the pitching coach go out there twice. If he goes out there a second time, the pitcher has to come out the game.
Yeah.
This is more so that the pitching coach could come out once per inning. Meanwhile, the catcher could go up to the amount of visits that they allow.
Leave it to MLB to
Okay.
have just the most stupid rules. But again,
Just to have regulations
Patience.
and then just not have a punishment for the regulation. All right,
Again,
cool.
but the whole purpose of this rule, along with other rules, is just to condense games. It's like the whole stolen bases with how many throwovers. It's just to shorten the game. I understand it's with the pitch clock, the ghost runner, like they understand the criticism of the young audience of people who don't have great attention spans, that like the game just drags on too much. And I get it. There are games where it's like, oh my gosh, how many freaking mound visits are we gonna see here? The catcher's there like every pitch. Like I get that. So I understand why they're doing it. It's more so just the entertainment aspect. There's no strategy behind it. There's no like real penalties. It's more so just like, let's move this game along and not have it be 4 hours.
Yeah, of course, it has to do with the time of the game, but I feel like there's just like some, I don't know, just lack of information that we have when, because like, again, it also can be another thing where we talk about just easily prevented these blowups and everything. When they walk batters, it makes the game a lot longer. Trust me, I went to a game that was 3 hours and 45 minutes because every single at bat was 10 pitches. Everyone walked. So when it comes to, condensing the game this way, a mound visit could possibly help, the possibility of maybe speeding up the game a little bit, preventing the pitcher from not being able to throw a strike and get the action going. But again, I mean, we're not here to talk about the rules here in the middle of September baseball, but it's just, again, there are things that I feel like can be prevented where we do have these flashes of great leadership in this clubhouse. And then there's some points where you're like, okay, well, I probably would have executed this a little bit differently. And they probably should have done this sort of thing a little bit differently to prevent this happening, because you can't really, even though you can't win every game, you can't really, it messes up the next game when you have to use the bullpen as much as you do. Like we've talked about of who's going to be available, who gives you length out of the rotation. But again, you can't afford to have these types of blowups. Now, it was not a 7-run, 8-run, 9-run blowup by Peterson, but it still was a close game at that current point when he was walking everybody, and they should have had Jeremy Hefner go out to the mound. I don't know if Alvarez went out to the mound. I don't know if it was Terren's catching or something. Lindor went out to the mound during that process. But the fact that
Alvarez
you
was
have a
catching.
pitching coach just sitting there in the dugout in the process of this, when your pitcher is very vulnerable at that point, multiple guys on base, not being able to throw strikes, it's concerning when you have that type of leadership of where, oh, I'm just going to let him go. And that's the main problem with, I feel like Hefner has some of these pieces he's able to put in line, but there's some moves that, like, I see from this, I feel like he just is not involved enough. And then we hear the whole drill that he was doing with Sean Manaea and everything, and we're like, okay, this is pretty cool. Obviously, that helps with the command and everything, and it has worked wonders with command with Sean Manaea. But there are some just other little things where you see that you're like, okay, let's prevent this. Let's prevent runs. Let's run prevention this with the coaching, right? Now, speaking of great run prevention, of not letting runs go by, because I've never seen this guy give up a run before, let's talk about Tylor Megill for a second. Now, Tylor Megill was spotted into the rotation because of Paul Blackburn's injury from injury. He had a rehab start with Syracuse, pitched well, gave length, and then had a sore back. He was supposed to pitch the first game, and then Tylor Megill was just slotted in at the final hour. He came in, had a really rough first inning. It looked like what we usually get from Megill, losing the strike zone, high pitch counts, not being able to execute great stuff. And then he just started to go on a roll for 5 innings right after that. And, I mean, one thing that I will say, and I feel like it's continued to be a tradition with Tylor Megill, is that he's really just continued to, like, really excel from being, like, the next man up, just from, like, complete emergency. And I feel like he did pitch fairly well in this game.
Yeah.
And I feel like this was one of the best starts I've seen from him for a while now. He did go 88 pitches. Of course, we had the Mets fans getting upset that we got rid of him early after giving up only 1 hit and no runs, only walking 2, striking on 9. He was on a roll. I was okay with them taking him out after 88 pitches. I did not, didn't want to stretch it even more. But again, like we've said, with the deep arsenal, he does have 8 pitches, but he only used 6 in this one. Not as much of the 4-seam as we did compared to with the White Sox and the previous start before, which I think was against Boston, It was Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Red Sox. Yep.
But just overall, dialing up a little bit of velocity, a lot more sinkers as well, keeping the ball on the ground like we have seen. I believe he had 8 ground balls in this game as well. When he's keeping the ball in play, he's keeping it low, and we've seen like a lot of hard contact against Tylor Megill recently. Of course, following that 30-pitch inning, you can see from that note, the first pitches were for strikes, 88.5% of the batters. And of course, a 32.9% called strike plus whiff rate, which is a good measure of control and command. A good selection of pitches, let's just say that, using the splitter as well as a put-away pitch. We already know that Tylor Megill does have good stuff, but he has really just struggled to really apply it for the longest times. Of course, about 17 inches of rise and induced vertical break on his fastball, which was some of the best that he's had all season. It was a really good performance for Tylor Megill. Now, the reason why I do bring him up is, of course, we have had tons of discussions about Tylor Megill and the lack of consistency and everything that has gone well for him. You're getting into the thick of a huge playoff race right now. You got 16 games left now. It looks like Paul Blackburn is not going to make his next start, and Tylor Megill is going to probably be the opener for the DC series.
Yeah.
Because it looks like David Peterson's going to start game
Sunday.
3.
Yeah.
So it looks like they're shuffling that around right now. You're going to have to get another quality start from Tylor Megill. And I feel like when we look at Tylor Megill, we've kind of seen him as the starting pitcher 6 this year. It has really not been a good season for him. There has been lack of consistency. We have seen some blow-ups. We know the story with it by now. My main question is the same question that I have in the poll of the chat. And for those of you who have not voted on us, let us know what your opinion on it is. Do you trust Tylor Megill more than Paul Blackburn at this current moment? For the final stretch of this season, 21% of you are saying yes, 32% of you are saying no, 47% of you are very 50-50. So basically putting this level of hierarchy, shall we say, in the starting rotation, kind of putting him on the same level as the chat has been, seems like they have put him on, as Paul Blackburn and Tylor Megill. Now, Megill, since he has come back, even though it's not that big of a sample, he's looked better. Again, we all know that this can go south real quick. Again, I will answer the question because I know that if I just directly go this route and go to you guys, you're going to tell me, well, I have no choice but to trust Tylor Megill because we have no choices. But when we talk about in sakes of winning this game, putting this team in the position to win, compared to Paul Blackburn, who could have made the start but is unable to, talking about the confidence level in Tylor Megill in crunch time, because there's not really much room for error now. Frank, I'll go to you. What have you liked from Tylor Megill? What have you not liked? I feel like, we have this conversation all the time, but in current moments as to where you need wins, you need to be able to be in that position to continue to win. What have you seen from Tylor Megill? Do you have more confidence in him than Paul Blackburn now? Is it kind of the same? How do you feel about it going into playing the Nationals, I guess?
Yeah, I think for Megill, one of the big things that really stood out to me is that the Mets offense was not great in the start that he made. So he was pitching in a close game. I feel like that's another big part of it is that he had to kind of pitch very carefully in the sense of he can't really make mistakes because since it's a close game, you don't want to just give the other team the lead and then your offense doesn't give you anything and you lose the game. So he definitely had quite a bit of pressure, even though it is against a Toronto team that is not good offensively. So, and like you said, also kind of the way it was very all of a sudden. The fact that Blackburn's supposed to make the start, can't make it, so you just throw Megill in, and he's able to still perform really well. That's another thing that I do like, that he was able to kind of meet the moment unexpectedly. So I do give him props for that. And overall, since his call-up from the minor leagues starting on August 30th, and that was against the White Sox, he hasn't been all that bad. And I think for me, too, just seeing him go 6 innings without hitting that middle inning wall that he normally hits in the 4th inning or 5th inning, when all of a sudden the wheels fall off and he's not effective and he's giving up home runs. The fact that that didn't happen either, I thought was also a good sign and definitely encouraging, because that's kind of the case when we've seen Megill have good starts this year where the first couple innings are all right, and then as the game progresses, then things go haywire. So I think seeing him actually go the 6 and get the job done was really nice. But with Blackburn, I'm more concerned about the health, because you have to keep in mind, if we go back a little bit, he spent quite a bit of time on the injury list while he was with Oakland this season. So when the Mets got him, he was just coming back off of injury not that long ago. And the way he got hurt in San Diego was a freak accident. He didn't get injured. He got hurt. A ball hit his hand. That happened. So I can't call him injury prone for that. But when you are rehabbing an injury and then injure something else while you're rehabbing that, and one is your hand and one is your back, that's just not a good sign as far as your overall health. As far as we're talking about being reliable, I don't know if this guy's just all of a sudden something else is gonna go out while he's pitching. I mean, this is not good. This is now multiple injuries this season in all different parts of the body, because earlier this year Oakland, it was his leg. He's just always had something different going on. And also, just like I said, the start that he got hurt in San Diego, it was a really bad start. So the last time that we saw him, he wasn't even pitching well. And like he's had a bad start against Oakland. He's not been great with the walks either. So I feel like all in all, right now, I would have to give Megill the edge. I think that if he's able to kind of string something together and get it going, that would be great. And right now, like I was saying, if Blackburn all of a sudden could become like a long man, I'm okay with that. Just eat up some innings for me. I don't think they could risk 6-man rotation at this point in the season. If anything, I feel like that B1 Senga is back, and that's only like for a week or so. So I feel like right now, Megill has given me a few starts in a row consecutively that were pretty good, that I would like to give him another shot. And the fact that it's against Washington too, like that's the one bad team that the Mets have done pretty good against this season. So I'm okay with Megill getting a start against Washington. I'm not like, oh my gosh, we're in big trouble. I give him a shot, kind of see what happens and just go from there. Because like you said, if Blackburn's expected to miss the start anyway, you have to use Megill because he's the available option. So that you don't really have that choice quite yet. So we do have the benefit of, okay, well, let's see Megill make another start since he's the only one available and see how that goes. If he puts together another good start, you're like, okay, well, I could let him get another. If all of a sudden he has that blow up against a Washington team, then you have to be much more like, okay, what are we going to do here? Maybe I shouldn't go with this. So I feel like right now he definitely has the edge, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, by health, I think that it's the easy edge. Of course, like we've said, they don't have a choice, but I feel like just analyzing it in the way of where the Mets need wins, can Tylor Megill put them in that position to get a win, especially against a team that is very beatable in Washington, who's not competitive? The one thing I do want to point out before I go to Andrew here is when we talk about Blackburn. Again, I was asking this on Twitter because I don't know what exactly did he do in the span of that rehab start to now that all of a sudden his back just goes out for 2 rotations.
It looks like his
turns.
back bothered him as he was pitching in the rehab game from what they were saying. So it looks like it flared up as he was making the rehab start.
Yeah, that's weird. And again, like we have some people in the chat, Stem saying that Blackburn is a bum. JB Stern saying that Blackburn does allow a lot of traffic. We've seen that with Tylor Megill too. Let's not say that. And Carlos Ortiz saying Megill is fighting for a job. Megill is questionable as well. Stanley coming in. There is a lot to wonder about Tylor Megill, and I feel like it's continued to be a trend where he's kind of just been slid into the rotation at like these awkward times year in and year out. Let's not forget 2021. He came out of nowhere. We don't know where the hell this guy came from. He was pitching in Double-A. They had to call him up because there were so many injuries for the rotation. 2022, Jacob deGrom gets hurt. He has to start opening day. He pitches well. 2023, Justin Verlander gets hurt. He has to take his spot in the rotation, and he pitches well behind Max Scherzer after opening day in the second game of the season. This year, Paul Blackburn gets hurt in the middle of a playoff race. He gets slid into it, and he's pitched fairly well. So there's this sense of urgency that has definitely done well with Tylor Megill. The problem is it's worn off very, very quickly in the past, and I feel like if you get that type of start against Washington, it's probably going to turn things around as to where, you might have to shuffle things around a little bit more because we already saw them kind of put Peterson in front of Megill for the rotational turns in Philadelphia because obviously Peterson has been better this season.
Arizona,
even though
they did that too.
And in Arizona, they did that too. If you have to take Megill out of the equation after a tough start, then you're getting put at hand as to where, okay, well, we need to really bank on Senga coming back for Atlanta, which it seems like he's on par for right now, but you can't make any promises. Andrew, I'll go to you. Again, you don't have any choice. You have to put Tylor Megill on the mound, but is there a confidence level in Tylor Megill over somebody like Paul Blackburn as of right now sliding into the rotation, or is this the same flav and flaw motherfucker that you like? What do you think?
Again, like you said, there's really the only option, and Miguel's pitching well, so I might as well let him take the start. Again, it's a Nationals team whose record is bad, but you've seen some of their young hitters come up and produce, so it's not the same old shitty Nationals team. Like you're seeing their young guys getting comfortable and end of the season, giving them some experience and hit well. I guess the conversation I was going to go to, and again, you get the nerd would know this data more. If it was a matchup, okay, if it's a team that's a heavy strikeout team, I'd put Megill on the mound because he has the better overall stuff compared to maybe a team that's more swing happy, trying to put the ball in play. Maybe you go for a guy like potentially Blackburn trying to get ground balls, playing that kind of conversation. But right now, you kind of have to stick with Megill because again, Senga and Scott. Maybe we see Senga at the end of the year. Scott doesn't seem to probably ever come back. We haven't really seen an update of him. We've seen the Senga update, but right now Megill's coming off two decent starts. Again, they're against second division teams. Am I gonna absolutely go nuts? But again, the Nationals by record are that second division team, so it lines up for him to have another winnable and quality start opportunity. Right now, you kind of have to go with because again, you've seen obviously like it says Sproat's done for the year. They put him on the development, so you're not going to see him, and they're not going to call up anybody anyway. So unless a guy like Max Kranick, which again, just rather go with Megill, he's already on the roster. So again, gun to my head, if you have to start him and he's pitched well, see if he can keep it going. Again, they're lining him up against those bad teams, avoiding Philadelphia at least at this series. Again, he might have to pitch against Milwaukee, or is he lined up for the Braves series? Because it's Phillies, Nationals, Phillies.
If he
Probably
is,
not
they're gonna
if
take
they're
him out of
expecting
it.
Senga to.
Well, then, yeah, obviously, yeah,
I
the
feel like
Senga.
that's probably the spot he would steal.
So, like, if you're saying this is his last start, you want it to be against any of the teams that the Mets are playing the rest of the year, the Nationals are that team. So, again, give him the ball. If he can continue to pitch well, maybe, if Senga does come back, maybe he goes in, like Frank said, that last weekend can be that long man against his brother in Milwaukee. So, again, you kind of you're stuck in that, this is what you got, and this is the bed you got to lay in. So, he's pitching well. Keep him going.
Yeah, and again, like when we talk about the rotation, game one of the series coming up, Stem coming in, talking about Quintana being the starting pitcher the Mets need to worry about. And, obviously I agree with that. We've talked about Jose Quintana a lot throughout this series, season. But I think that when it comes to Megill, I like the fact that they are telling him, okay, enough with the bullshit. Stop trying to paint the corners here because we know you're not very good at it and you're very wild. Air this thing out. Try to get the swing and misses, attack hitters, and that's what he has been doing. He's struck out a lot of batters in this small span of coming back from AAA. And for those of you wondering, he has a 2.35 earned run average in his last three starts. So I don't know about that, but that's ace material when I talk about this. That's a great David Peterson sample. So we're going in that direction as to where he is going to lead us to a playoff victory and be our game one starter. But when it comes to some of the sequencing with him, I like to see him still adding in the sinker as well because it's a lot better of a pitch than I feel like he has confidence in. So I was glad to see him kind of utilize that as well, keep the ball on the ground, also get a lot of swings and misses with the fastball as well. Of course, the cutter to tunnel everything. A lot of things that I feel like when it comes to somebody like Peterson or Quintana, guys who need to kind of nibble around the strike zone and locate to get those swings and misses and get those results. Talking about somebody like Megill who has plus stuff. It's not elite, but it's good. This guy can air it out and blow by hitters. For some reason, it hasn't really been a consistent utilization of that, but he could blow by some hitters as well. And I'm glad to see him doing that. Sure, it is sacrificing some of the hard contact. We have not seen much hard contact, mainly because we just really haven't seen him face that many good teams since he came back, since AAA. But in a really good position right now. But we all know that with Tylor Megill, it can go haywire at any point. Like we're talking about the confidence level in him, putting him on the same level as Paul Blackburn. It could change after the next start that he has against Washington because we have seen him get blown up. We have seen him dominate for 6 to 7 innings. It's happened before with him. And I feel like that's the current situation that we are in right now. I feel like he's in a situation with how his, stuff plays in the major leagues against hitters that right now he's kind of on that trajectory of his luck kind of turning that way, because he's been screwed around a little bit this year. I'm not saying it particularly by the defense as well, but I'm just also talking about just the overall batted ball data and the underlying peripherals that he does have. He's due to have better performances than he has had this season. But again, he also has to execute it in that way, like we've said, just completely attacking hitters, because he has the stuff to do it. And hopefully he continues to do that. And we have a very fun time on our way to the playoffs, stacking wins against teams like Washington, because we only have 3 games or 4 games against what? Is it 3 or 4 games? I don't know. 3 games. 4 games? So those are not free wins, but opportunities to stack wins to get advantage in the Nationals. Yeah, exactly. 3 games against the Nationals. So you have the advantage as to where you're going to be a favorite in that series. You should take 2 out of 3. You probably should sweep them. And he needs to put them in a position to do so. And that's kind of the main factor as to where.
Well, they have to figure out who starts in the Phillies series, because that's a 4-game set. So I feel like one of those guys. Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah,
that's the only 4-game set we have left, right? Because then we have 3. Yeah. Okay, so we'll see what happens there. Again, they can run with like these games dialing down. They can run a 4-man rotation with the off days or whatever. We'll see how they do it. They have David Peterson going on 4 days rest here, so we'll see.
No, between the Nationals and Phillies series, there's no off day.
Yeah, I know. But
actually,
they are going
between both Phillies and Nationals
by 4 days rest now.
Day.
They are going by 4 days rest now. So with David Peterson, so we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if they're willing to be aggressive in that sorts. Maybe Senga gets added to the equation in one of those series in Atlanta. He's eligible to come back. Maybe that puts in the rotation a little bit. Hopefully we are in position to win. But I do agree with whoever said it. I think it was Stem saying Quintana's the one to worry about, not Megill. But again, we've seen struggles from all of these guys. But again, Megill has come back from AAA, and he's pitched pretty well. Let's just say that. Small sample size, not many innings because he's 5 and fly, right, Andrew? But the thing is that we're going to need that type of contribution to stack up those wins, especially against teams that they should be beating. And Tylor Megill is part of that equation when he lines up. Anything you want to add, Frank? No? Okay. You just had your you were figuring. I am worried about Quintana. Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of concern regarding Quintana with this full-on series, and we'll get into that in a second. But I do want to talk about some other concern. Now, for those of you who don't like us being negative, I would close your ears here. I would warn you. I would let you know that we're going to talk about some ugly things that have been going on, okay? And if you can't handle it, we don't have a censorship bar, so you're going to have to be your own censor. But other than that, all the jokes aside, let's talk about the Mets outfield. Now, the Mets outfield starting off the season in the first half was one of the main reasons as to why this lineup was so deep. You had a lot of guys that can help you win in the margins, guys who are coming through when it matters in high leverage situations, a lot of situational hitting well with a lot of the outfielders. In the second half, it has been a completely different story, relatively behind 4 different outfielders that we have. Jesse Winker was added late on in the season, so we're not really putting him on that equation. DJ Stewart's been in and out. Don't really consider him an outfielder, more of just a DH and just a tubby guy that looks like Vogelbach on Ozempic. But when we talk about the Mets outfield, it's been just the tale of 2 outfields. If you're looking at it from just pure production, It's been completely different. Of course, Brandon Nimmo had that hot stretch going into the All-Star break, and we've talked about Brandon Nimmo, of lowering him in the lineup. It has just not been a good performance from him in the second half. Starling Marte, we've talked about him as well regarding his health. It's not been a great turnaround. Harrison Bader has struggled as well. 49 weighted runs created plus for him, a 45 weighted runs created plus for Marte in the second half since returning from injury, only having 56 plate appearances, but still not looking good. The only guy who has been better in production, who doesn't really play much, that being in doses, Tyrone Taylor, who started it off as a good role player, good marginal player, but as for production, probably the best outfielder that they've had out of the four that are on here. Now, when it comes to the Mets lineup, the full-on hitters from the infield, Mark Vientos, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, you're even getting contributions from Jeff McNeil before he went down in the second half. Jose Iglesias has been good. We know that a key part to the offense and maybe the future of the offense would be Francisco Alvarez. When it comes to the outfield, it seems like a lot of it comes from the depth of this lineup, and that is what has made the roster very deep. The deepest part of the roster has been the outfield, because I didn't even include Jesse Winker, who was added later on at the deadline by the Mets, who has also provided provided a lot of value as well from the left side of the plate. Being a left-handed hitter, that's a lot better than DJ Stewart and can play the outfield as well. But when we look at these four outfielders who have been here all year, I'm just talking about it from opening day to now, there's a lot of different things that you can unpack. Let's just say that. A lot of different stories, a lot of different instant cases. The one guy that I want to start off with is the guy that I feel I have the most concern for, that being Starling Marte. And we've talked about Starling Marte a lot recently since he came back. I know that Frank had some tough remarks on him. Yes, he had the sac fly. He lifted the ball at the right time to expand the lead. But I am just going to open this up. It's going to be harsh. I know it's going to sound harsh, but I feel like at one mindset to another, someone is going to agree with me in this sense where at this current trajectory that we're on with Starling Marte, and I'm not trying to go into off-season talk here, but I have pretty much made up my mind as to where we have a big problem if Starling Marte is on this team next year. That's kind of how I'm looking at it with him, because the very noticeable decline in value you get from him, even if he does put up the offensive season that has been overall solid this year, but he has not been healthy for most of it, it's still a major concern. He looks like the shell of the player that he once was. And right now, in this lineup, if he is starting, he's a full-on liability to me. And could he possibly get it going? Because we've seen shades. Yes. But I feel like we have taken so many shots so far with Marte in terms of his health that I don't know how many times we can do this until we just see that there's absolutely nothing left. Because we're scraping the bottom of the barrel right now of what we're expecting for Starling Marte, and we're not getting any of it. Frank, I know you're jumping out of your seat to add to this. What do you think about the situation with Starling Marte? Because it is a very frustrating one when you look at what you're relying on from him and you're just not getting it, even just from the bottom of the lineup or from other tools just out there to win in the margins.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely is something that worries me a little more next year. But, one of the things that's kind of interesting to me is that when the Mets had this massive run in June and July, when the offense was doing phenomenal, who wasn't a part of that, who was hurt and not really in the mix, was Starling Marte. Is that the Mets had, at one point, the best offense in baseball without him being a factor. So there is a way this team can succeed without him. And to me, I think losing Jeff McNeil as a potential guy that could have gone to the outfield and putting Iglesias at second as a left-handed bat, I feel like is also kind of hurting this team and is now leaving us with DJ Stewart as our left-handed option. I feel like that definitely is something that's pretty frustrating. And now we have Eddie Alvarez making starts. I'm more concerned about that than anything, but that's a different topic. I just think that, like, overall, like I said with Marte, I'm still waiting on the home run. We know the defense is not what it used to be. The hitting is not what it used to be. The stolen base is not what it used to be. And I think that what concerns me the most about next year is that he's going to be a year older. So there's no way I could expect him to be better. I mean, that's just kind of how sports work. That's how aging works. I mean, Father Time is undefeated. So I feel like with Marte, if he's even when he's here, he's not doing great. But I think that you also have to keep in mind the fact that there's a good chance he's going to get hurt next year as well. So even if he is on the field, I don't know how often he will be, but when he is, he's also not playing great. So he's giving me like both things that you don't want. Number one, not being reliable by not being there. But even when you are, you're not really helping too much. And I think that like even like Tyrone Taylor, for example, who you showed has had a decent offensive second half. We don't really see him anymore now that Jesse Winker is here and Marte is here. But I think with Taylor, the thing that helps him over Marte is that no matter what, his defense is still good in the outfield. And he's still giving me speed on the bases. So it's like, at least I'm still getting something. Because with Marte, this version of Starling Marte, I'm not getting either. So again, it's just like, I'm more so like, what are you doing? And the other thing that bothers me about Marte is that he's not a high on base guy. He's someone that has a lot of these ugly at-bats, and I feel like he just kind of fits in with a lot of the issues the Mets have with chasing those breaking balls on the outside, right-on-right matchups, swinging at outside pitches. I feel like he's a big-time culprit with that. So he's a guy that really chases too much to me, and I just feel like it's just not really all that productive, but he's here because the lack of options, because a lot of people, like you showed in the chat, were complaining like, oh, well, why is DJ Stewart on this roster? Why is DJ Stewart here? When you look at the Syracuse Mets roster, he's technically their best option because everybody else is not good either. I mean, the Mets picked up Jose Asnacar, but he's been even worse than DJ Stewart on the major league level. He can't hit at all. So he's not going to be a solution. Jackie Bradley, he came from my Long Island Ducks. I mean, I love Jackie, but I don't have much expectations for him. So he's not someone I would count. They're reluctant to call up young players, so you're not going to see Drew Gilbert or Luis Angel Acuna. Your other option is Mike Brasso, who's an infielder, and I would prefer him over Eddie Alvarez, but that's it. That's literally the Syracuse Mets roster. The rest of these guys are a bunch of young legends like Wyatt Young and Carlos Cortez. Like, you're not going to see these guys. Andrew's boy Luke Ritter. You're not going to see these guys. So the Mets are now stuck in a situation where no matter how bad Marte plays, how bad Nimmo plays, how bad Bader plays, two of the three, or sometimes all of the three, are going to be out there. That's just the way it is. So I'll let Andrew say his piece before we get to the other outfielders. But with Marte, I feel like this is where he's at right now. And it's not a good spot to be at. I really feel that when you're looking at next year, I would love to see a power-hitting corner outfielder be added to this team. I know Kyle Tucker's not available this offseason. It's next offseason. But like we talked about, Soto, Santander, Teoscar, like there's going to be guys that can definitely fit better than this version of Marte because it's just not helping. I've said it before. If we were getting the Marte of old that's doing a lot of things and is a spark plug and giving you hitting, fielding, running, and giving you all the things that Marte used to be capable of, I'm good with it. But he is nowhere near that player right now. And I don't think he's going to be, especially next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's really easy to have that sort of concern. Let me just say, he has not played that much since coming back on the injured list. And listen, I think that at this point, he's become the 2 out of 3 days now. And that's not something that you want to see from a $20 million a year player. And I get it that salary doesn't mean everything in the current moment. But when you're talking about it, you need a $20 million a year player needs to be playing every day. He has not been able to do that. He's getting older. He is aging. He is 35 years old. He's going to be 36 next year. But when he is playing, I mean, if you want to just call it about total, he has hit 20 baseballs into the ground since coming back from the injured list. He has hit 8 in the air. Okay. He has hit 10 line drives. Great. Not hitting the ball hard. He does have 3 barrels, but like there's no consistency. You're just expecting basically just to squeeze as much toothpaste out of the bottle, and there's nothing left. There just is not nothing left. And I feel like there is just there's a lot of concern going into next year for Starling Marte. I get that, but I also have come to the conclusion where he basically just looks like an absolute zero out there with the amount of hits that he has taken health-wise. The double groin surgery, we talked about it, the core surgery. He even had another lower body injury this year. I just don't know how long you can do this where he's playing 2 out of 3 days. Tyrone Taylor's been productive, and listen, I think that even if Tyrone Taylor were to play 6 games in a row, we probably would get tired of him. But again, he does have tools, speed, defense that allows you to merit putting him in the lineup, batting 8th, batting 9th, and currently with this offense being as stagnant as it has been this past week, I think that the starting job should go to Tyrone Taylor at this current moment. That's how I'm feeling of riding the hot hand. Tyrone Taylor's not hot by any means, but he can be a lot more productive than Starling Marte right now. Andrew, I'll go to you on this whole subject. Are you just would you just give this to Tyrone Taylor? Would you just start him now? I know that Starling Marte is going to play no matter what, but it's a big concern. I mean, I don't know what else to say that hasn't been said already about Starling Marte. This guy is just a complete zero.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Carlos Mendoza, he wouldn't. I'd bench his ass now. And it also hurts that Jesse Winker's kind of gone into that slump, and he's like 0 for his last 13. But at least Jesse Winker's giving you good ABs. At least he could draw you the occasional walk to get on base. What has Starling Marte AB wise? 3 sliders down and away, 3 swings. Like, I get it. Yes, Tyrone Taylor isn't the greatest player, but right now, again, 16 to go. I need every opportunity, every person in that lineup. I need to give the guys who have the most tools and the best possibility to win. And if Carlos Mendoza, who's been a pretty good manager this year, he's been better than most. You got to play the hot hand. You also have to play, okay, ego's got to go to side. Enough of how big their check is at the end of the year. You got to play what's going to help you win games now. You got to get at least 10 out of these 16 to get to 90. I think that's the number. And right now, Starling Marte is not helping you in that produce to that win column. And like you said, Tyrone Taylor can give you every else possibility with the speed, with the defense. I mean, I guess the everyday lineup, I guess, depending who's on the mound, Winker should be in right. You're going to keep, the defensive merchant in center, and you keep Nimmo in left. And then late in games, you can put Tyrone Taylor if it's against the lefty. Obviously, he would start. I wouldn't see Marte at all the rest of the year, but obviously, we know the number next to his name. He's going to get playing time, 2 out of 3. Again, at this point of the year, you really can't be like, well, you got to play the salary game. There's no more time for this. And if Jesse Winker can get hot, he's your everyday right fielder. You got the defensive merchant, and then you hope Nimmo again. But also, I guess, to play the positive side with Marte, if there's any team for his career, he loves hitting against the Philadelphia Phillies. So there is no better. I think he leads MLB hitters against a team batting average or whatever. He's always for his career slaughtered the Philadelphia Phillies. So this could be maybe a blessing in disguise, having 7 of those last 16 against the Philadelphia Phillies. Maybe get Starling Marte at least some productive ABs. Do I expect him to hit? God, no. But I'm trying to see the positive side again. Yes, I said bench him. Not I don't want to see him. But if he is going to play, maybe you do see a little bit of, the production that for his career, he has killed the Phillies. Maybe this is what exactly he needs. Again, he's going up against Aaron Nola. I don't know who's pitching game 2, but Christopher Sanchez is pitching game 3, so it's a lefty. Winker's not going to play any.
Calling up, I think they said it was, was it Colby Allard?
Is it Allard?
Oh, it was a bullpen
it
game.
was
Great. Bullpen game in game 2. Nice. But again, you don't get Wheeler. You're not getting Ranger Suarez, like, sadly, we're not getting Taijuan Walker. But again, you're only getting Nola in game one. Sanchez isn't amazing, and then you're getting a bullpen game. Yes, Philly's bullpen is pretty good, but again, it lines up pitching matchup wise. Again, you got Severino, and Katana against Nola isn't the greatest, but again, you got Sandy Koufax in game two against the two lefties. So it lines up perfectly. We'll see again. Marte, Kelby Allard is a lefty, so again, that's going to neutralize Winker too. So you're going to see either Marte or Taylor in the lineup 2 out of 3. And let's just see what Mendoza does.
Yeah, we'll see. And I mean, I hope. To be honest, when we're talking about lefties with Allard, or you're playing Sanchez as well, you're going to be going up against him. Tyrone Taylor, I don't know if he's been exclusively great against lefties this year. He's kind of been
He
half
was in
and
his
half,
career, but he's been like kind of weird this year.
He hasn't been
In
great
his
against
career,
lefties,
he was good
yeah.
against
But
lefties.
I mean, yeah, he has reverse splits this year. It seems like that's the deal with a lot of Mets when they come over here.
And also, I mean,
splits,
Marte being in Citizens Bank, like that's a friendly ballpark for him. So I mean, Andrew has a good point. Like, this would be a good time to have a good series. I mean, it really, really would. I'd love to see him get going because it would be a big.
It would
boost.
be nice.
It'd be a big boost.
Yes, it would be nice, but when we talk about the other pieces, such as Harrison Bader, who has also struggled, I think that it's a lot less noticeable. Like I've said, I didn't really notice the slump for a while, mainly because because he comes from the bottom of the lineup as well. He gives you the elite defense no matter how bad he's hitting. But I think that when you also add on someone who's been very noticeable, such as Brandon Nimmo as well, and he's also struggled. Again, like I said, this outfield makes this lineup deep, and it has not been able to do that in the second half to any consistency at any point. But when I'm talking about it from the stand-up of lineup construction, riding the hot hand, I'm willing to deal with Bader hitting like shit because, again, you can just bat him ninth. Nimmo's going to play every day because he's an everyday player. But when we talk about Marte, I think that they gotta somewhat limit it a little bit. I get it, the lefty-righty type of thing, but they're both right-handed hitters. If you're thinking about the lefty-righty and you want to put Marte in there, you should have the same thought for Tyrone Taylor, I think. And to be honest, I would give Tyrone Taylor the starting job, even though you get a rest day for Marte and he doesn't have to do the 2 out of 3 or whatever. Right now, Marte's giving you absolutely nothing. So it's either, you put in, not really the hot hand, but you put in the more valuable player right now, that being Tyrone Taylor, or you just give it to Marte because of the seniority for no apparent reason other than he's getting paid. He's in this lineup every single day. Right now, I feel like they're kind of curving towards not playing him as much because of how much he struggled, and also the fact that he's just been playing 2 out of 3 now. He's kind of taken the Mark Canha back seat a little bit. You have Jesse Winker here as well as another outfield option. You have depth. I want to see them actually use it, even though the outfield has struggled recently. But Harrison Bader, Andrew, I'll go right back to you. Is there a way that you'd utilize this in any way? Again, we're not going to put Winker in center field just to take him out of there. We're not going to put I don't really like Tyrone Taylor in center field personally, but he can play there. The struggles for Bader, is it easy to just bury him in the 9-hole? What do you think? Is that just the best solution right now, or are you benching him as well, as to where he's struggled a lot recently?
I mean, it would be a lot easier to put him in the 9 spot if Alvarez can get going. But again, we said, no, it'd be nice to see him get going. But right now, again, he is what he is. In the early season, he gave you a lot more value offensively than most of us thought we were going to get from him. And now you're seeing this god-awful stretch. But again, like opposite of Marte, he is bringing you elite defensive value where it's like, okay, yes, the Rays went to playoffs with Kevin Kiermaier every year in the playoffs, or like let's say the Dodgers had like what's it called? They brought in obviously they brought in Kiermaier too, but like there are good teams that can get away with shitty offensive, at least good defensive center fielders. So, is it would I love to see him get going again? Yeah, but again, he exceeded a value, at least my expectations offensively early in this season. So again, he's coming back down to earth. But again, this team was about run prevention. He's a major part of that run prevention in center field. So if Alvarez can, get going a little bit, and I would feel a hell of a lot more comfortable with him in that 9 spot if Alvarez were to get hot, or even just not even get hot, just get back to at least 60% of production of catcher offensively. Then it's okay leaving him in that 9 spot and just play good defense, because he can occasionally run into one too. You saw it in the Arizona series. It was the only hit he had in like 3 weeks. It was the homer. He still has that ability, and the fact they're facing lefties again, you're not going to put Jesse Winker, Nimmo in center. If you're going to do it again, I just wait till next year if you're going to do it. But again, just because of the run prevention aspect of it and the other tools base running, if he can he doesn't draw a lot of walks, but if he gets on, he can steal your bases. You kind of have to keep him, because again, if you're not calling up Gilbert, which they're not going to, he's really your only true center fielder right now. So he has to kind of just stick him out there, and hopefully, he can run into a fastball up and drive it out of the ballpark like he did earlier in the year.
We'll see how they kind of approach this outfield again, because, again, they do have the options. It is a deep outfield because these are all major league players. No matter if they are actually struggling, this has been a main point of emphasis as to where we're not seeing much from the outfield recently. We just really haven't. And again, like I said, that is what has made the Mets a deep team with this outfield, because it seems like a lot of the complementary pieces have come from the outfield as compared to Brandon Nimmo, who's a big catalyst. But most of the Mets offense, like the most offensive impact, has come from their infield. And they've kind of just built it from depth to the outfield to make it a lot deeper of a lineup. And right now, it's kind of just lowered to the fact of where it feels like it's the starting pitching that has been very solid, and then Lindor and Vientos. Like, that is kind of how it has felt in the second half. And I think a lot of Mets fans can vouch it in that way. And when they're not hitting, you're not getting much, because we have seen some streaks come along from Alonso. We have seen, Jose Iglesias has been good, but again, he's not going to carry this team on his back the way Lindor could, or the way Pete possibly could if he actually was right. But when it comes to this outfield, I do want to propose one thing, and then we'll move on. Winker is not the best choice for right field when you talk about it, and we all know that Tyrone Taylor is a part-time player, and he will continue to be one, and that's the best way to have him, is in doses. If you are just putting Nimmo, designating him to left field, Bader plays center field because of the defense, a Winker left-handed, right-handed platoon, Winker and Taylor, if it gets to a point where Starling Marte is absolutely just unplayable, which I think it's already come to that point, would you guys be open to something like that, where Winker and Taylor just share something like right field, or maybe they share left field, and then Bader plays right field, or Nimmo plays right field? Like, in the corners, the corner platoon to make up for the lack of production that you're getting from Marte, even though you also have these outfielders who are not playing well. Frank, I'll go to you with that kind of concept. Again, they have the flexibility to do this, but with Starling Marte in this equation as to the situation he is in, it's really hard to tell how they would do that without putting him in the lineup every single day. And like we've said, with the Phillies and things like that, 16 games left, Marte has just given you absolutely nothing since coming back from the IL.
Yeah, they're not going to put Nimmo or Bader in right field. That's not even an option, in my opinion. They're not going to do it. Even though, like, I'd consider the Nimmo part, they're not going to do it. I feel like right now I'm okay with like you said, a Winker and Taylor platoon, because a lot of like good teams do that. I mean, you look at Arizona, for example, like kind of the way they utilize Jock Peterson, or the way they utilize Randall Grichuk, like really kind of like these specialists against these certain matchups. And like you said, for Marte, he's not really doing good against righties or lefties. So I feel like with someone like Winker, at least he can do good against right-handed pitching. But the other elephant in the room is JD Martinez, and with his age, the amount of off days he needs. So it's like those days Martinez needs an off day. That's where Winker kind of slots into DH. So then it's like, okay, well then let's say you are facing a right-handed pitcher, then does Marte and Martinez need a day off? Because that's how you end up with DJ Stewart out there, which really should never be an option. Like at this point, we talk so much about like should Marte be starting? Like DJ Stewart should never be starting. It should always be Tyrone Taylor. Like I don't understand that at all because Stewart can't hit and he really can't field. So it's like we said, at least give me defense. You know what I mean? At least just give me something. So I really don't understand that. And I really can't believe that Stewart and Eddie Alvarez started the same game. That was just absolutely mind-boggling to me. I don't care that they're left-handed. They're not good. So that was just really drove me nuts. But I feel like, with Taylor, he's also a guy that can be a late game defensive replacement for those days that Winker starts. So no matter what, he's still going to get into the game and you're able to like cover up Winker's weakness. Or you could have tried to do something weird with like, you have Taylor start against the lefty, but then if a righty comes in, you could pinch hit Winker, and then somebody goes out to the outfield, or like you could figure something out that way. But the other big part is also Nimmo. I feel like with Brandon Nimmo, his struggles offensively really hurt the equation as well. And you can't really put him in center because he's not nearly as good in center field as he used to be. So it's like, why would you? Because he's not doing much offensively and he's not doing much defensively. So I feel like we were saying with Bader, as much as I have my hitting concerns with him, he's always had hitting concerns. At least you're getting solid defense in center field. Like there is value in that. So you leave Bader where he is in center, at least have defense there. Because the thing is that I never expected Bader to be a big offensive contributor. He had the great first half. He's had the bad second half. He's not either one of those players. He's somewhere in the middle, maybe a little closer to the second half, but he's somewhere in the middle. He's not this bad, but he's not that great either. So he just has to kind of even out. But with Nimmo, he's supposed to be a really good offensive player, and he doesn't have the injury and age excuses that Marte has. So he's the guy that we gave the big deal to and still gonna be here for a few more years. That I really need him to step up. I mean, we're talking about over 100 plate appearances. Like, come on, Nimmo, please. Eventually, can you please wake up and beat Brandon Nimmo? Like that would really, really that would I feel like kind of fix everything. It's like if you had Nimmo at the top, helping out Lindor and Vientos, then you actually have a combination that you could make some things happen with. But if he's struggling in offense and fielding, the arm is already a concern no matter what part of the outfield he's in. He can't play right field because of his arm. So I feel like there's just like a lot of guys struggling all at the same time. And a lot of guys have these very glaring weaknesses that's like you're trying to cover up so many things, but you only have so many players you could do it with.
Yeah, and again, I'm not really calling for the rest of Nimmo's career here. It's just been a really rough stretch for him. We're not used to Nimmo producing like this at this level, as to where he's just been completely nothing. You see the signs of what he was doing, especially going into the All-Star break. He was one of the hottest hitters in all of baseball, and for no reason right now, for no actual outside reason, we're seeing him just struggle like this. And I don't know. Again, I still don't know what it is. Maybe we'll get some answers eventually. I know eventually he's going to go back into it. I don't know if it's going to be this year towards the end of the season. Maybe he can wake up. But right now, you need somebody from this unit to do something, whether it is Bader in a pinch, whether Marte can be half of the player that he was from 2022, Tyrone Taylor providing you defense, but also sometimes he gets a little bit of a hot streak. I feel like platoons are probably the best way to do it right now to make up for what Marte has not been able to do. But I know that Marte is still going to continue to play. We're going to see Marte play in the playoffs if we get to the playoffs. It's going to happen, and hopefully they address it in the offseason regarding that. But speaking of also platoons, I'll send this over to Andrew with the outfield situation. They have the flexibility to do this, and like you said, you would bench Marte on a regular basis. Is there a part of you that would visit a platoon in right field where you're trusting Nimmo to get hot, you're trusting the glove of Bader from the bottom of the lineup? Is that the best situation right now, or is there just going to be a little bit more of a balance like you continue to see?
I mean, what we're gonna see is probably again seeing Marte every week. But again, like I said, I'm fine with the platoon out there. Again, the fact that if your team is gonna line up lefties, maybe again that means more Tyrone Taylor. So you see that again. Yes, McNeil getting hurt and now taking that extra outfielder. But again, right now you got two wasted spots at the bench because again you have Eddie Alvarez who Newt is fast, and then DJ Stewart who is just fat. So you're wasting half your bench on absolutely nothing. So the fact that at least if you were to call up JBJ, at least he's a great defender and is a left-handed bat, because God forbid we were so hot, we had a boner that we needed a left-handed bat. That's why I picked the fat guy. You could have got JBJ. Mike Brasso again was the other option, but again he's right-handed. They're not going to call up the guy that's hitting 95 homers a week, because why call up a prospect when he's red hot? Call him up. If we're not even going to call him up, just add a spark for something. But it's only 2 weeks, not like it matters. But who cares? Again, it didn't have the ability to put Beatty on the 60. It add him to the 40 man, but didn't have any opportunities for that. But at this point, again, you're going to see the platoon hopefully. But let me phrase it: I would do the platoon, but you're still going to see Marte chucking his old ass out there at CBP. At least CBP's right field isn't massive. Again, it has that kind of shorter port, so he doesn't have to range, but they're going to throw his ass out there, especially with the two lefties. I don't think they're going to bench Nimmo, so they're going to ride along with Nimmo. And you'll see just have JD at DH, Marte's in right, and Tyrone Taylor will probably maybe get a start if Nimmo continues to struggle. Maybe they'll put him out in left and Bader will stay in center. So again, right now they don't want to call the kids up. So again, we're not even an option. So and the fact that they wouldn't even just call up JBJ to have another good defensive outfielder, but no, let's just get the bat who can't hit for shit. But you know what? He hits left-handed. That's the guy we want. And then obviously we got an Olympian that's just here to run. So again, you got to keep that Terrence Gore, Tim LeCastro role. Got to keep that going. But again, right now you're playing with no bench pretty much. Just playing with a backup catcher pretty much right now. And you're seeing the thinness of this roster and not wanting to adapt. But again, you're still going to see Marte. We'd like to see more Taylor, but again, that money is always going to be the big priority.
Yeah, and again, he does have that number next to his name, and we're talking about it again. But I feel like when we're talking about winning in the margins, like I said, the best utilization of the depth does not include Starling Marte right now, because he's not providing anything. Not a single tool has he provided since he's come back from the IL. He's just completely tore a hole in this roster right now since he came back. And I don't know. I just feel like at this point, that's the main concern that I have here. It's more long term with Starling Marte going into next year. But right now, you're just seeing a bunch of nothing. But one thing I will say in the key to the next series, and even though we do have to preview the next one up, one of these outfielders is going to have to step up in order for this offense to do something fluid. As compared to what they did in Toronto, because the Phillies are not Toronto. They're a different level. They're one of the best teams in all of baseball. So whether it's Nimmo, whether it's Marte, if they play him against the Phillies that he so kills, whether it's even Taylor providing some power, extra base hits, speed on the base pass, whether it is Bader coming through late on in games, someone's going to have to contribute from this outfield that's been struggling to add a little bit more and not just have Lindor and Vientos do all of the heavy lifting for the offense. Now, let's talk about, before we get into the next series, studs and duds. Again, I just keep forgetting to do it right after the series recap. I'm never going to remember. I never will. One player that has been really good throughout this 3-game stretch, this 3-game series. Let us know who yours are in the chat as well. Studs, I will start with you, Frank. Who do you got? Who do you want to give the torch to?
Yeah, I'll give it to Sean Mania. He continues to be pretty steady, and when you're watching your team get no hit, you have really little room for error, and you really gotta step up. And the fact that the Mets had just lost the game last night, you don't want to lose the series to Toronto. And he really didn't have his best stuff, like with the walks that he had and things like that. But I just think overall, he was still able to go deep into a game, get out of a lot of jams, and really just give the Mets a position to where, even though they're getting no hit, just the one swing was able to tie the game. That's exactly what happened. So I give Mania a lot of credit.
All right. Andrew?
That was probably gonna be my. So I'll be different, and I'll go with a guy who had a hit in every series according to the board, and had the kind of put away 3-run shot. Please do more of this, Francisco Alvarez. Can we go away from Eric Chavez? If Eric Chavez comes to you, cleat him in the dick. Tell him to get the hell away from you, because he has absolutely destroyed you. But again, hitting every one of the series, be different. I know probably Carson will go with the obvious, the other captain probably most likely. So just to see Alvarez get a hit in every single game and see him actually drive a baseball, God forbid, that's a rare sight to this year. But I'll give Alvy a little bit of love.
Yeah, we did have a note. I don't know, Andy Martino. He put something out about against Alvarez today of how there's been an adjustment of him hitting the ball harder these last few plate appearances he has had, better swing decisions, and sure enough, the home run that he hits just put the game away. So he did have a tweet about that. I don't know if what it is.
And he was aggressive early in the count too, in the home run.
Hitting fastballs, nice.
Yeah, forget it. Go back to hitting average, you young one. I think it's pretty easy to identify who was the stud of this series, basically taking us back from the brink the way that he did in Francisco Lindor. I mean, what else can you say? I think that right now he has put himself into the conversation as to where not only is the leader of this team, not only is he the best player on this team, but exactly where the hell would we be without this guy? I mean, right now, Starling Marte, talking about him for a while. Francisco Lindor is carrying this team on his back right now. And even though he had that little rough stretch there, he put himself right back into that MVP conversation as to where he was coming through when it mattered. The Mets were dead for 8 innings. And one swing completely changed the mood of the situation. The Mets batted around in that inning, I believe, because Lindor came up again in that inning as well, and it just turned the game completely around and he single-handedly helped us get that series win, which, again, we need to stack these wins in the playoff race. And, again, I don't know what else you can say. Francisco Lindor continues to be that MVP caliber player for us. And I'll say it again, where would we be without Francisco Lindor playing the way that he has been this year? Okay. Now on to the worst of the worst, the duds. Frank, I'll go right back to you. Someone who did not perform well in this series.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for 3 games. It's just for this series, but Mark Vientos did take the 0-4 in every game. He had some ugly chases, ugly strikeouts. He's been amazing all year. He's bound for a slump. I get it. This is just one series. He had a 0-4. That's it. I'm fully confident he'll bounce out of it. He'll be fine. I'm not worried. But he did have a bad series.
All right, Andrew, you want to be the bad? No, you don't want. You never want to be the bad guy. Go ahead.
I'm the positive guy, even in the negative. I mean. You look again, the lineup, again, Brandon Nimmo, you could say that situation. Pete Alonso, besides the sack fly, you can go that route. So, again, anyway, I can bash that tubby blubber whale. I'm taking it, Pete Alonso.
That's it? That's all you want to say? Or?
Well, I mean, again, mine is...
You want to ramble on? Go ahead.
No, Pete Alonso. It's just Pete Alonso. Again, besides the sack fly, again, you saw him consistently striking out all the time. But, again, it's nice to see, hopefully, maybe... him actually coming up in a high leverage spot that this can move forward, but throughout the series, again, it's just the tub himself.
I think it's pretty easy to say who I'm going to go with. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to go with the low-hanging fruit because he just still should not be here and should not be making starts. DJ Stewart, I mean, just I don't want to see him for the rest of the season. I know that he probably needs to be on this roster, but like in no
Does he?
situation should he be playing. I mean, who else in Syracuse is actually going to replace him right now? Jackie Bradley Jr. Like who?
He's fast. I mean, again, give me a guy who at least gives me another tool.
But like
The
I'm
tool
saying,
is-
like even any like by default, he's probably here no matter what. I don't want to see him play. I
Why
don't
do
want
we
to see
have
him
to
play.
have-
I'm done.
Yeah,
This
why do we
is
need
has
an
been
obese guy every year?
This is past course. Like it's past the course. He had a hot stretch. He's not going to have it again. He's not a major league hitter. He was hot for a second. He's not hot anymore. There was a ShopRite Schwarber moment there. It's done. Why is he here? He's just not competitive. He does not give you anything. I don't know why the hell he's still here. Hopefully he's not here next year as well. I don't want to see him. I'm done, especially with the like we've said repeatedly, extensively in the last segment of the outfield. There's no reason he should be There's no reason he should be in the lineup. Same thing goes for Eddie Alvarez. He's just kind of a gag at this point on this team. He's the 28th man. He should not be starting. He should be a pinch runner. That's about it. And that's literally it. But I see no situation in any point because you have Jesse Winker off the bench in that situation that DJ Stewart belongs playing on the field. Like this guy belongs as a cheerleader for the rest of this year. Like that's like I'm done. Like I there's no reason to have this guy in the lineup at all. Like it's run its course enough already. I mean, the guy should just be sitting in Syracuse right now while also occupying a roster spot up here. Because if it's that bad, it's that bad. And even if you want to get rid of him, Jackie Bradley Jr., like we said, it's a better option than him, who provides absolutely nothing. He should not be here. Could I have thrown Peterson under the bus? Sure. But, like, again, it's a tired gag at this point. Pete Alonso is another good one. You can talk about that for hours. But let's move on here to what is ahead, and that being a huge series in Philadelphia against the first place Philadelphia Phillies. And let's get into the probables for this upcoming series. As we know, Jose Quintana will get game 1 at 6:40. Going off against Aaron Nola, who the Mets have had success against and also have struggled against. It's been very half and half. That will be game 1. Game 2 goes to Luis Severino on September 14th. At 4:05 p.m. Eastern, they will go up against Kobe Allard. So it looks like a bullpen game there. And then game 3 will go to David Peterson, looking to bounce back against Christopher Sanchez, who has been having a very good year out of the Phillies rotation. That will be at 1:35 p.m. Eastern time. Now, Andrew, I will go to you with the keys to this series. This is a really good Phillies team. This is one of the best teams in all of baseball, and they have played like it for a while. They have struggled recently, but they are still one of the best teams in all of baseball. It's a key series. It's do or die. What do you have for us? The keys to this 3-game series, 3-game crucial series coming up in Philly.
In at least 2 of the 3 cases, get to the starters early, because we've seen starts with Aaron Nola. If you get him early, you can bomb him. He's out of here, get him out in the 3rd inning. But you've seen, if you don't get him early and you let him get comfortable, you've seen him go 7 no-hit innings. You've seen him dominate like we said, that's that kind of hit or miss depending on what Aaron Nola decides to show up. Again, Christopher Sanchez having a good year. Again, the bullpen game should be a positive, especially if we have Severino on the side. But again, the Phillies bullpen is one of their strengths. Now, yes, they have they've got a great rotation. They got a good lineup, obviously, with a bunch of pressures. But you got guys like Strom, Hoffman, Carlos Estevez has come over there and just filled a perfect role. You still have our good buddy Jose Alvarado there. Like, their bullpen is really good. As it used to be, the rest of the team sucks. It's amazing that bullpen sucks and you can win games late. They are one of the best teams late in games, maybe besides San Diego, where you can say, that's a dangerous pen. If you don't get to that starter, that pen is going to be, runs are going to be led at left at a minimum. Again, you got to win. Again, we don't like obviously having Nola against Quintana. You have two of your best 3 pitchers on for the season going in this series, so you have the pitching advantage for the most part. If you want to say the 2 are wash, and then in Jose Quintana versus a bullpen game, again, the pitching, you have guys lined up. Again, no Alec Bohm for Philly. Bohm's hurt, so that's one guy out of their lineup. But again, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, we don't know those guys against the Mets. Bryce Harper, we know Castellanos is getting hot too. So it's a murderer's row, which we know what it is. But overall, again, the last couple of years they played them well. This year, we had those great one fun game in London. Obviously, we don't want to talk about the other game in London. So again, it's a team historically, lately in recent history, you've played well against. You have guys that have good numbers against them. So again, if you get to these guys early, especially in Nola's case, and don't let him get comfortable, because you've seen it, how it happens. When those guys get comfy, it usually ends up with big L's for the Mets.
Frank, we've got an 8-game lead for the Phillies right now with 16 games left, and the Mets have 7 games to play against Philly. So, I mean, there is a way you can gain ground there. Of course, we're looking at the wild card, which is more likely. But, Rosie coming in here, keys to this series. Phillies are 8-2 in their last 10 games. They are playing really good baseball as of right now. And then, of course, Stem coming in saying, as the optimist, Mets win this series 2 out of 3. What are the keys to that? Because I feel like that's the best case scenario here.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things to monitor is Kyle Schwarber is a little banged up. He didn't play yesterday, so we'll find out kind of what his status is. JT Realmuto might be back at some point this week, so there's a whole Mets almost storyline there to get him back in the mix. But, there still is a lot of star power on that Phillies roster with Bryce Harper, with Trey Turner, with Castellanos. I think for the Mets, knowing that Philadelphia does pitch really well, they need Quintana, Severino, and Pearson. Just keep them in the game. They can't have any blowups because they just won't have a chance. So if the rotation could keep them close, and then, like we said, it just comes down to somebody stepping up. I mean, if Lindor and Vientos going to carry again, okay. But it would be nice to finally see somebody else kind of have a big series, whether that be Alonso or Marte or Nimmo or JD Martinez, like one of them. One of that group, if they could have a big series, that would really give the Mets a chance. If not, and you're just counting on Lindor and Vientos, they can do it, but it makes it really, really tough. I just want to see somebody else have a big series, not a big game, a big series. Because again, these guys have too much expectations, are getting paid too much proven of a track record. To all of them have such big struggles for a while now. Somebody else has to step up.
One thing I will say, Philly has had a really good season pitching-wise as well as hitting-wise. They're one of the best teams in all of baseball, but they do have a tendency to give up home runs, their starting rotation. They like to pound the strike zone a lot. You're in CBP, the hitter's ballpark. Hopefully they could win by the home run ball. I'm hoping that they do. Looking at you, Pete Alonso, maybe you could wake up. That would be cool. But overall, again, I think the key to this series, again, is the game 2, where you have that bullpen game. Of course, Mets seem to really like hitting for David Peterson, so maybe that's the way that they win this series. But 2 out of 3 is the ideal. I think that when it comes to this Phillies team, they've been really good at home. Not to mention, just in the current situation, just don't get swept. Because right now, when you look at it, the worst, if you do get swept, there's a solid chance you'll be behind Atlanta by the end of that series. If you lose 2 out of 3, most likely the worst might be, you might be like tied with them at the end of that series. And then you go to the Nationals, where you can probably make up some ground. So just don't get swept. Like, that's the ideal situation. I think that when you do go into it, it's more easier said than done. But anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing before you go, Andrew, real quick. Yeah. How about Mr. Shohei Ohtani? Why don't you go be an MVP this weekend? Why don't you have a massive weekend? Hit your 50 home runs, get your 50 stolen bases, and do it against the Braves. Please and thank you.
Yeah.
Because at least that's like a positive. Like, let's say worst case scenario, you get swept, and let's say you play the game, the Dodgers lose 2 out of 3, you're back to tied. So like again,
exactly.
There you can
You're
go
in the
worst
driver's
case.
seat. You are in the driver's seat. You know.
So again, like even the most there's no way the Braves are going to sweep the Dodgers. No way that happens.
Usually in this scenario, 16 games left, let's say, 3 weeks left of the season. Usually in this situation, the Mets don't control their own destiny. Right now, they do. So
I can think
at this current moment, what?
No, I was making a 07, 08, and 2022 joke, but flew right over your head. But okay, keep going.
Okay, yeah. Don't talk when I'm speaking. Anyways,
Oops.
When we talk about the Mets' current situation, 16 games left. Usually when it gets late like this, they don't control their own destiny if they are in the playoff race. Right now, they're in a really good spot. Like we've said, they have a 1-game lead. Is it a possibility that if they, let's say they take 2 out of 3, if they take 2 out of 3 from Philly, there's a possibility that they could jump into one of the higher wildcard spots. That could happen as well. So again, it's very pivotal for the Mets going into this series. But anything else you guys want to add regarding this? And I think that we're going to close this thing up. There's no real injury report right now, except like for what's going on with Paul Blackburn. It looks like Kodai Senga is still on course to come back for the Atlanta series, but it's not confirmed yet. We don't know. There could be a setback. We don't know. Fingers crossed he comes back for that Atlanta series because, again, like I have said multiple times, I think I've said this, I don't know, for like 10 episodes in a row, it's going to come down to that team, that series in Atlanta. It 100% is going to, whether the Mets try or not, unless the Mets, by some magical point, the Braves just completely fall over and they have a 7-game lead by the time that starts. We know damn well that series is what it's going to come down to. So hopefully the Mets can gain some ground here. Like I said, don't get swept. Parting words, we'll end this one off. Andrew, I'll go to you. Final comments you want to make. Don't make stupid comments. Just make comments.
Stupidity. Again, to check on the other 2 wild cards. Again, even if this goes well, Diamondbacks playing the Brewers. So first place team for the Diamondbacks. Padres are playing the Giants. So that's, But again, let's say you have a decent 2 out of 3 weekend. Again, we always say, and again, like you continue to pound it down, all it takes is one of those teams above us to kind of fade a little bit. That maybe that, again, yes, we all think that Braves series. And they have.
They have a little bit.
So if that continues, I'm not saying that Braves series will mean nothing. But if you continue, let's say you play 9-7 the last 16.
Yeah.
I don't think, and let's say the Padres them 7-9 or whatever, all it takes is one of those two to do that, and you're jumping them. So maybe in that Braves series does not matter as much as we say it does. But for right now, as it stands right now, it's the biggest series the rest of the year. So all I'm saying is, I know school's back in session. I know Frank's very old. But these last 2 weeks, MLB package is cheap, or probably the games will be on MLB Network. We might want to be staying up and watching late night games just to say, if one of those teams do fade, maybe that Braves series isn't all or nothing. Maybe it only means like 40% of our playoff chances compared to 100%. But obviously, we got to focus on Philly, control what we can control, and then let all the external factors weigh itself out.
Yeah, you're getting way too ahead of yourself. Like
I'm being positive, bro. There's magic, bro. We got that Met. Made a Mets magic video. I got positivity fuming. Come on.
Like,
the Knicks are winning the championship. The Mets are going to the playoffs. It's all about that positivity. It's no longer lol Mets. It's the Met. It's the grimace game match. We going crazy. Come on.
He's doing way too much. Just way too much. You're always just doing way too much. All right.
If you don't do anything,
Frank,
you're too negative. Come on.
Frank, what do you think?
Yeah. I think that for the Mets, just you got to control your own destiny and you have to win. Because, I don't want to go into the playoffs kind of backing in with like, oh, Arizona struggled and we were able to kind of sneak in. Because like I always say, it's one thing to get there, but like I want to win when we're there, because getting there is one thing. We have to actually win. So they got to get hot and they got to win it and do it themselves. You know what I mean? Like they've got to win the games, beat the head-to-head matchups, and show that they're a team that can actually make some noise once you get to the postseason. So for me, I'm not really worried about what everyone else is doing. I just want to see the Mets do their job and win.
Yeah,
I also
they
didn't realize
currently
it's
control
4
the spot.
against the Dodgers. I thought it was 3. So you do get kind of that
The Braves
wrap
have 4
around.
against the Dodgers.
The Braves have 4,
On a
including that
Monday?
Oh, we're
on
going
Monday.
to the World Series. Holy
Because
shit!
again,
Oh, wow.
so again, play positive. Mets playing the Nationals on that Monday, the Dodgers. So there could be a game there. But again, focus on Philly. But it is something I didn't realize. I just looked at the graphic. It's 4 with the Dodgers, and it's
So
a wraparound.
basically by probability, let's just say, all the Mets need to do is not get swept right now, and they're in a good
Yeah.
position going
much.
into
Yeah.
a get right series against Washington after that. So right now, again, like we've said, the Mets are in the driver's seat. They hold a wild card spot at this current moment. Braves do not play tonight. I think. Is there anybody that plays tonight? I don't know for the rest of the night.
I know the
is it-
Phillies don't.
is it
I'm
pot-
checking now.
The Phillies don't. Okay.
Just
Everyone else is
the
gonna
yeah,
go.
nobody that we care. Yeah, nobody that we care
No.
about plays.
Okay. So we have some current.
It's a
We
football
have some current
Thursday.
rest.
It's
It's
a
a football
All right.
Thursday. That's true.
Yeah.
It is football Thursday. So we are sitting. We are sitting right now again, like I said, in a playoff spot. Confidently, let's just say that. Keep winning games, keep stacking games. Hopefully the offense wakes up at more of a fluid rhythm, let's just say, for this series, because you're going to need it against this Philadelphia team. And like you said, just don't get swept. That's your worst case scenario. Let's just say that. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. Listening. For those of you who came in here and watched the entire 2-hour show live, for those of you who popped in for a little bit, we appreciate all of you. Make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. Turn on post notifications for this very podcast that is now recorded twice a week, Sundays and Thursdays sometimes when they line up with the series. Sometimes it's different. And, of course, the audio versions that drop at 9 a.m. the following day. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on TikTok and on X. Follow all of us individually. And of course, 16 games to go. Let's go Mets. And we'll see you guys next time.